I'm pretty sure all of you have seen a Ronnie Coleman vs Phil Heath matchup on YouTube before, even on this channel. However, I myself have never compared these two particular versions, 2003 Ronnie and 2011 Phil. Usually, I was comparing 2011 Phil to Ronnie's earlier, smaller versions from 98 or 99, and for the 2003 Ronnie, I was choosing Phil's bigger versions from 2013 or later in his career. What I failed to figure out until now is that Phil cannot respond with size to 2003 Ronnie. No version of his even comes close to Ronnie from this point of view. However, 2011 Phil Heath has something Ronnie never had, especially not in 2003. A near perfect physique, including the midsection. And for those of you who still think 2013 Phil is a better fit, indeed that version may be a bit fuller. But look at these three poses side by side, and you should have your answer. 2011 is the most flawless Phil Heath version, and I would even go on to say it is the most flawless of any Mr. Olympia winning physique ever. So in this video we're comparing perfection versus freakiness, the beauty versus the beast. Let's see if 2011 Phil Heath can finally bring a loss to 2003 undefeated Ronnie Coleman. For a special matchup like this, we're going to do something different, so we're not going to start with the front double biceps and make our way through the poses as usual. Let's try something different. Let's kick off the comparison with the side triceps. Why this pose, you may ask? Because it's the most one-sided pose in this whole comparison, and our challenger today, Phil Heath, is the one dominating. It's the easiest pose to judge because not even the biggest Colemanite would dare to argue this. The side triceps is probably Ronnie's weakest pose, while for Phil it's actually his best one. Maybe not the most dominant, as his opposition was better in this pose than in the back poses, for example, where Phil was winning more dominantly. But comparing Phil's poses to each other only, the side triceps may actually be the most perfect, if we can say that. He's got arguably the best lateral head of all time, and I know some of you may think of Rolly or Kevin who have great shape, but they don't have Phil's definition. Furthermore, Phil's arms overall and shoulders are superior to Ronnie's in this pose. Not to mention the midsection, where Ronnie loses as much ground as for the triceps itself. Probably because of the execution, Phil wins the lower body overall as well. All these make the side triceps a very dominant win for Phil Heath. Now let's return Ronnie the favor with a pose where there should be no argument about the winner, the front lat spread. Now Ronnie is winning this pose for sure. He's got the overall width, the lats, the pec striations, you know the drill. But the difference between Ronnie's win here and Phil's win in the previous pose is that Phil looked perfect there, but he still looks very good here as well, while Ronnie, with all due respect, looked modest in the side triceps, and he doesn't exhibit perfection here either. He's got a sloppy midsection, especially when we compare it to Phil's defined abs, and also Ronnie has a poor execution here, let's be honest. He really could have done better in this pose. He oddly crouched his neck between his shoulders, and also the leg position is pretty odd with that tall stance. So Ronnie Coleman wins the pose too, but not as convincingly. Next, I want to look at the most muscular pose. This is already a much closer pose between these two and needs a deeper analysis. In the most muscular, the actual most muscular athlete always has the advantage, and it's pretty safe to say that in our comparison, Ronnie holds that title. However, when it comes to the outer arm, Phil Heath is always beating Ronnie because of his better triceps and his long-headed biceps. Phil also wins the forearms and the shoulder roundness against Ronnie, and winning the guns overall is huge in this pose. Now, Ronnie wins the chest, another focal point in the pose. Ronnie has arguably the best chest of the modern era, but Phil's chest, despite being narrower, was full and bubbly, just like the rest of his physique that showcases an incredible cartoonish 3D effect. Also very important, Phil has a nice tight waist, whereas Ronnie's midsection is all over the place here. Downstairs, Ronnie has the more impressive quads, but Phil's are perfect for his physique. In the crab variation, it becomes obvious, at least for me, that Phil has the overall advantage in this pose. Ronnie has the stature and a ton of mass, but Phil's round muscle bellies are everywhere, and his goat arms pretty much seal the deal in his favor here. I'm sure some of you would still give this to Big Ron, but for me, this is a Phil Heath pose. Close, but Phil wins. Another close pose that is pretty hard to judge is the abs and thighs. Judging by the criteria of Ronnie's era, Ronnie would win. If you remember, Ronnie beat Dexter Jackson during the 2004 Mr. Olympia Challenge round, and I don't think Phil's abs and thighs match that of Dexter. So based on that, Ronnie would win. However, probably 99% of us agree that Dexter should have won that pose then, but that doesn't mean Phil should win here because, as I said, Phil is weaker than Dex here. What do we have here? The pose is called abs and thighs. Ronnie wins the thighs. Like I said earlier, it's not because Phil has weak legs, it's just that Ronnie's are more impressive. His thighs are just huge and detailed too. When it comes to the abdominals, Ronnie's look pretty bad spilling out like that, but it's not like Phil has the prettiest set of abs either. Definitely better than Ronnie's though. Now, Phil's entire midsection is harder and on point, but he's got that narrow structure that hurts his taper, another key point in this pose. Due to his wider structure and better flaring lats, Ronnie wins the taper aspect despite having a larger midsection. Now, we could judge this in 100 different ways, but honestly, for what this pose should represent, Phil is closer to that, even though both are pretty far in my opinion. So I'm giving Phil a slight win in the abs and thighs. Bodybuilding is not only about mass and conditioning, as you people always remind me when I talk about Nick Walker, so let's put the theory and practice here. Phil's symmetry and balance win this pose here against Ronnie Coleman. So a pretty strong start for Phil Heath in this comparison after the first half poses, leading Ronnie 3-1. Next, I want to visit the side chest. Ronnie could lose this pose before we get to the back poses by the looks of it. Let's see. From the side, Phil's lower body looks more complete because he actually posed better. Now, during Ronnie's era, bodybuilders didn't lean down as much to showcase their hanging hamstring because I'm sure Ronnie would have looked very impressive. Plus, Ronnie has the better outer quad here. Upper body, it's almost like the most muscular again because Phil dominates that shoulder arm department against the king. However, there's a key difference here than in the most muscular. Ronnie's midsection is not an issue here. So considering this plus the fact that Ronnie wins the actual chest department complicates things even further. Ronnie has the overall size advantage, while Phil has better execution in my opinion. The tiebreaker is something I haven't mentioned in this comparison already, the conditioning. Now, both Ronnie and Phil are conditioned, there's no doubt about that, and they probably have similar body fat percentages here as well as water retention. Nah, I'm lying. Ronnie has negative body fat percentage actually. Okay, on a serious note, Ronnie benefits from a genetic gift in having that paper-thin skin that showcases muscle fibers way better. Phil has genetically fuller muscle bellies, but in this case, in this particular pose, Ronnie's quality is more important in my eyes. Those chest and shoulder striations just kept him from giving up this pose and actually losing this pose to Phil. A very close win, probably as close as the abs and thighs. We're left with the two back poses and the front double biceps. Let's see first the easier one, which I feel is the back lat spread pose. But before that, I still want to remind you that over 75% of you watching my stuff in the past month are not subscribers. If you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. It helps more than you think. Back to the pose. Even though Phil Heath looks perfect standing there by himself, when we compare him to Ronnie, the sheer weight of the king is too much for Phil's narrow structure. Now, I know Phil actually compensates with those superior muscle bellies even through the back and even through the back lat spread, but this is just Ronnie's lights out game over pose. Ronnie almost matches Phil's 3Dness here, but has a way bigger and wider back. also downstairs, as balanced and complete as Phil would look, Ronnie is just so freaky with those glutes and hamstrings. It could be debatable who's got actually the better lower body, but Ronnie is definitely freakier, and combined with his superior back secures him another win, making the score 3-3 at this moment. Front double biceps is next, and this pose fully represents the essence of this comparison today. On one side we have Ronnie Coleman, who looks like a monster who could eat Phil Heath alive here. However, Phil has the cleaner look. He's more complete top to bottom and has fewer flaws. For example, Phil's forearms and calves flow way better with the rest of his physique. Judges never cared too much about this, but in a close comparison, it's always an advantage. And Phil's main advantage here is the midsection, where he's got a pretty strong case to beat Ronnie's careless execution. Now, when it comes to the biceps, there's nothing you can complain about Phil's, but Ronnie's are just freakier. You could argue this and that, but my eyes are drawn to Ronnie's every time. Also, Ronnie has the better triceps sweeps, which is important. Phil won the lateral head, but Ronnie has the better triceps long head, arguably the most defined of all time. Ronnie also wins the quads again. Just like for the guns, Phil's are great, nothing to complain about, but Ronnie's are simply more impressive. When you also factor in Ronnie's taller and wider frame, it becomes pretty hard for Phil. However, that midsection cannot be ignored. At least judging by today's standards, Phil would probably win. I'm sure Tyler Mannion will give this one to Phil, but I digress. I'm going to put it like this. The only strong argument against Ronnie here remains the midsection, which personally I can find acceptable. I've seen worse. I mean, even with the slight distension, he at least still has defined abs there. So I wouldn't have Ronnie lose this pose mainly because of the midsection. It will be a close win, but still a win for 2003 Ronnie Coleman. So the score becomes 4-3 for Ronnie on poses, but Ronnie's wins were all very close. Especially the side chest and the front double. Phil looked great in the other two losses, the front lat spread and the back lat spread, unlike Ronnie in the side triceps, for example. I also think Phil's wins in the abs and thighs and most muscular were more convincing than Ronnie's, so if Phil Heath wins this last pose, even though the score will be tied at 4, I think it's pretty safe to say Phil was more convincing overall. Let's see the back double biceps. This is hard. This will not end without controversy. Now, I know that based on the same logic as in the front double, with Ronnie being freakier overall, he looks like the winner, especially since the midsection is out of the equation, but man, Phil's back is just more perfect here. Let's get another shot for Ronnie from a better angle. Now his back looks more massive and freakier, but looking at the backs in isolation, Phil has the cleaner look, the better muscle separation, the better muscle bellies, and the symmetry. Unlike Ronnie and Dorian for that matter, Phil's back is perfectly symmetric. Now, all that is true, and there is probably no right or wrong answer for this pose. It's simply difficult to assess it. However, I think I have the rationale for this pose. Ronnie still has the overall size, man, which is key in bodybuilding. He still dominates with freakiness downstairs and with the guns, and his back is also huge. If Phil had the same stature as Ronnie, I think this pose could arguably go to him, but as they look here, I would still give the advantage to Ronnie. The guy was too big and conditioned, besides having all those qualities, so Ronnie wins 5-3 on poses, a very close matchup indeed. As a conclusion, this was probably the closest matchup against 2003 Ronnie Coleman, at least on this channel, which makes me wonder why I didn't do this comparison before. What do you guys think about this matchup? Who do you prefer? Do you have Ronnie's freaky size and conditioning at the detriment of some aesthetics, or do you prefer Phil's more closely perfect, more balanced, and more symmetric look overall? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, make sure to like this video for the algorithm and to subscribe for more videos like this. See you next time, guys.